What's up, everybody? Welcome to MTG Headquarters. My name is Alex, and today we're doing another EDH deck tech. This time we're doing Derevi, Empyrial Tactician. Now, for those of you who don't know, Derevi's a Bant commander. Bant is green, white, and blue. And I actually really like this color combination because it gives you a lot of like the card draw and bounce and counters in blue. Some of the big green stompy creatures and ramp, and a lot of the white board wipes and spot removal, and an 8/8 vigilant indestructible creature, which is always good. So Derevi, for those of you who don't know, is a 3-drop. I like cheap commanders. The guy who taught me how to play Magic likes cheap commanders and kind of ingrained it in me. So a 3-drop is perfect for me. And Derevi, I think, is one of the best cheap commanders because it never costs more than 4. I'll show you why in a second. So it's a 3-drop commander, 1 green, 1 white, 1 blue. It has flying for a 2/3, and whenever Derevi Empyrial Tactician enters the battlefield or a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may tap or untap target permanent. Now, that can be like a huge combo piece. I don't really use this deck for combos. I don't have a lot of like really intricate combos, and I never build infinite combos in my EDH decks because I don't like to push someone out of a game all on my own. I'd rather, get a little bit more interactive with people. But its second ability is what I like. For a colorless green, white, and blue, you can put him from the command zone onto the battlefield, which isn't casting, so it never costs more than 4, which I really like. Things that kind of screw that up are cards like Containment Priest, which if a card would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. So you don't get any tapping or untapping with Derevi, and you can't put it out on the battlefield. You have to actually hardcast it. So we'll go through the lands here. This deck runs 37 lands. I started with the first EDH deck I built. I ran 37, and I always kind of start there and just kind of work my way up or down depending on how the deck plays. But this one runs 37. It's got 11 basics in it, 3 islands, 4 forests, and 4 plains. I have more plains and forests than islands just because there's more 1-drop green and white stuff I'd rather do early on than blue stuff. There's only like 3 or 4 counters in this deck, and most of them aren't early game. I run the on-color fetches for this deck. I don't run off-color fetches because I'd rather have actual lands I can use in those slots than just be able to grab lands. The on-color shocks, the check lands, I think they're called, where it enters tapped unless you control one of these 2 types of lands. I run all of those on color. I only run 2 of the scry lands, the temples. I don't know. I think I had to make room for one of my later lands, but I run all the bounce land or the Karus on color, and then the 2. They only made 2. What do they call these now? Tangos, battle lands. They only made 2 on color during Battle for Zendikar, so I run both of those. And then Command Tower and Reflecting Pool, I run those in all my commander decks just because Command Tower is a really good value land. And Reflecting Pool, if you have Command Tower out, can tap for any color you need to use. Reliquary Tower, this deck does do a lot of card drawing, so it's nice to have a Reliquary Tower so you have no maximum hand size. Arcane Lighthouse takes away opponents' hexproof. It doesn't... I mean, it's nice to have if somebody has like Swiftfoot Boots or Lightning Greaves out to kind of target and get rid of those creatures. Academy Ruins, there's a few artifacts in here that I run that I'd really like to keep around. So Academy Ruins just lets me get those back on top of my library so I can keep playing with them. And Temple of the False God, I like 2 colorless. I run Wasteland because I pulled it, so why not? Strip Mine, I like to get rid of people's Reliquary Towers or Urborgs if they're using Urborg and Cryptghast to tap for 2 with every land. Mirror Pool is nice. I didn't really like this card the first time I saw it, but my buddies put it in his EDH deck, and every time I try to get rid of his Avacyn, he Mirror Pool and puts another copy onto the battlefield, so it really kind of screws me up. And then Maze of Ith. This is an older land. If you guys don't know what this does, you tap it, target attacking creature becomes untapped, and it doesn't deal or receive combat damage during that combat. Now, it doesn't tap for anything. So if you have an opening hand with a Maze of Ith and like 2 other lands, you might not want to keep it. It depends on what's all in the hand, but it doesn't actually tap for anything. So don't bank on it being something you can use other than to get you out of a combat. So we'll go through the artifacts here. I run Meekstone because Derevi can untap any creature I have. So it doesn't matter if it has a power 3 or greater. So I just put Derevi out or deal combat damage. Every creature is untapping itself when it deals combat damage, as long as Derevi's out. Elixir of Immortality. I don't run any of the, like Ulamog or Kozilek, any of the guys who shuffle your entire graveyard in. So I like this just to be able to put my graveyard back into my library when it gets late game. Plus 5 life is nice. Soul Ring is nice in pretty much every EDH deck. Sensei's Divining Top. I like to smooth out my draws. A lot of times I find with a top, you're just looking at the top 3 over and over again, and you're only finding one new card because you draw 1, look at the top 2, and you're just kind of shuffling them around. And I mean, it sucks that you can't scry them away, but it's definitely nice if you have 2 lands on top and your value card is the next card. You can put it right to the top and keep those lands on top and just shuffle them down to the bottom. Lightning Greaves gives things Shroud. Remember, you can't target your own stuff with Shroud, so you can't put another artifact or enchantment on it. Swiftfoot Boots gives Hexproof, which lets you target, which is nice. Blade of Selves, I'm going to set this one to the side. It gives creatures Myriad, which is really good when you're playing a multiplayer game, which, like, if I'm attacking with one creature that has Myriad, another version of that creature comes out, a token, and is attacking the other players, my other opponents. So that works well with things like Sun Titan, because another copy of Sun Titan will enter, and you can grab another card from your graveyard and put it onto the battlefield with 3 or less. Or with like Prime Speaker, because another Prime Speaker enters, and even though it's legendary, it does have to enter for the legendary rule to take effect. So when it enters, it looks at the power and toughness, gets counters, and then you draw. Then the legendary rule, and you sacrifice it. So it does become nice. I'm going to set this to the side because I'm going to bring that up with other creatures later. Thought Vessel is just a nice way to have no maximum hand size. Plus it taps for 1. I really like Thought Vessel. And a turn 1, like untapped land into Soul Ring into Thought Vessel definitely sets you up nice early in the game. Sword and Feast and Famine. This is my favorite sword in EDH of the like 2-color protection swords. It gives +2/+2 and protection from black and green. And then whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you just untap all your lands. That is really nice when you get it to work and get through for some damage. So you put it on like a trampling creature, or if they're playing a black and green deck, it just goes right through them. But then you get to untap all your lands and, you know, have fun with your second main phase. Disc works really well in this deck because I can put Disc out for 4, put Derevi out, and then untap Disc right away, or deal combat damage and untap Disc right away. So for 5 on 1 turn, I can just wipe the board, and it works really well, but tends to set you back. So I wouldn't do that unless you either have like an Avacyn out, or it's like I need to do this or I lose the game right now. And then Batterskull, I just like Batterskull a lot. It's a creature. It comes out with a Germ token, +4/+4, Vigilance and Lifelink. There's not a whole lot of ways to gain life with this deck. There's a few, but Batterskull is definitely one of the better ones. You put that on a big creature, and you're just, you know, pounding through for tons of damage. We'll go through this is my instance of sorceries. I run Worldly, Enlighten, and Mystical Tutor. Mystical Tutor grabs an instant or sorcery. Worldly Tutor grabs a creature, and Enlightened Tutor grabs an artifact or enchantment. Just puts them on top of the library, and then you can grab them next turn. It's nice because you can do it end of turn on your opponent's turn. So you can do that turn 1 and grab something you need. But I wouldn't really do it on your turn unless you have a way to draw that card, because you don't want somebody to mill it off the top of your library, or for you to grab one thing you think you need with Mystical Tutor, and it turns out that they play something completely different, and your whole game plan changes. I was talking about that 1-drop removal, Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshares. Just some of the best 1-drop white removal. I think it's probably the only 1-drop white removal I can think of. Exile target creature. Path lets them get a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. And Swords, they gain life equal to the exiled creature's power. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of glare. But, you know, it just gets rid of the creatures you can't get rid of any other way. Actually, this works a lot better. So super, super valuable cards in this deck. Cyclonic Rift is a card that I see in EDH almost every game I play. Not necessarily if I play this deck, just tons of blue decks run it. For 2, return target permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Or you can overload it for 7, which returns every non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. It really kind of sets the game back for everyone else while not affecting you at all. But when people see it, they usually flip the table on you and get real mad. Arcane Denial, it's one of my favorite counter spells. It's a 2... Let me zoom in a little bit on it. There we go. Arcane Denial, it's 2-drop, 1 blue, 1 colorless, counter target spell. That spell's caster may draw up to 2 cards on the beginning of the next upkeep, and you draw a card at the beginning of the next upkeep. That's not your upkeep, that's just the next one. So if you're playing with 4 people and you cast it on the, you know, your first opponent's turn, on the next opponent you get to draw, and then they draw. But they can forget it, so don't remind them. Counter spell, 2 blue, counter target spell. Crow's in Grip. This is some of that exile or enchantment removal, not exile. But you're destroying target artifact or enchantment, and it does have split second, so they can't really counter it, and they can't activate abilities unless they're mana abilities in response. So they can't like top in response to this, so you can get rid of a top, and they can't put it back on top of their library. It's actually really nice. Oblation. The owner of non-land permanent shuffles it into his or her library, then draws 2 cards. I play this mainly for the meta at the store I play at, because we have a lot of people who will take control of your stuff, so I can get it off of their board. It goes into my library, and then I shuffle. So it does owner, not controller. So if they take control of something of yours, you get to draw off of it. But it is nice to be able to get creatures or stuff that just you can't get away any other way. Just shuffle it into their library. Capsize is a super dick move. 2 blue and a colorless to return permanent to its owner's hand, and you can buy it back for 3. So if you have 6, you can just capsize every turn, basically. It really sets people back and makes them pretty angry, which might not be something you want to do, but depending on how the game's going, you know, you can capsize a big creature and then counter it when they try to play it the next time, or you can just keep capsizing it and then it'll always have summoning sickness. Supreme Verdict is an uncounterable board wipe, you know, 2 white and a blue and 1 colorless. Destroy all creatures. It can be exiled, so if you have things like Mind Break Trap's the one that exiles, right?
Yes.
All right, Mind Break Trap. Yeah. If you have things like Mind Break Trap, it can get rid of this, but it can't be countered any other way, as far as I know. Day of Judgment. I run this over Wrath of God mainly because I have the player reward one, and it looks pretty cool. But 4-drop, destroy all creatures. If you want to run, if you have Wrath of God, it probably works better in this deck just because those creatures can't be regenerated. Day of Judgment is just kind of a blanket board wipe. And Mystic Confluence, this is my favorite Confluence out of the 2015 Commander decks. You pay 5, and all the Confluences work the same way. You can choose 3, and you can choose the same one more than once. Counterspell, unless it's controller pays 3, return target creature, or draw a card. Most of the time I'm doing this, I'm countering a spell twice because it's like late game and I want them to have to pay 6, and then drawing a card. If I have to bounce 3 creatures, it's usually this will be the last turn of the game because I don't like to cast this for that all that often. We'll go through the enchantments here. Let me just get them on camera. Getting a lot of glare. Come on. There we go. So I play Exploration. 1 green, you can play an additional land on each of your turns. It's really good value. Get it out turn 1, you can play another land right away. If it's an untapped land, you can tutor for something, you can remove something. Super good value early game. Ghostly Prison, which has become ridiculously expensive. I think it went up from like $4 to like $15 recently. But creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each attacking creature. It's just nice to be able to sit back, in your big ivory tower and not get hit for a little while you build up kind of a board presence. That's the same reason I run Propaganda, which does the same thing in blue. So it's creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each attacking creature. They both cost the same. One's white and one's blue. They both do the same thing. It's usually easier for me to get Ghostly Prison out early. Rhystic Study. The earlier you get Rhystic Study out in this deck, the better. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1, and it's a 3-drop. So you can get this out realistically as early as turn 2 if you get, like a Blue Source and Soul Ring, and the next turn Rhystic Study, and you're just going to be drawing a ton of cards off of it. Detention Sphere. Detention Sphere works really well in multiplayer games. When it enters the battlefield, you can exile target non-land or target permanent not named Detention Sphere and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent. So if I'm playing against 2 people who have the same card and I exile one of them, it'll exile both of them. That does kind of screw you up if it exiles something of yours, but when it leaves, those things come back. So it's not the end of the world, but super good removal for, creatures with indestructible, stuff like that. Leyline of Anticipation I play mainly because Prophet of Kruphix is out of the format now, and I can't cast creatures at instant speed. You can start the game with it in your hand. Don't do what I do every time and forget to put it onto the field before the beginning of the game. You can cast non-land cards as though they has flash. So that's sorceries, enchantments, creatures, artifacts, everything, except lands. Mirari's Wake. Really good way to double your lands. Creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to your pool of any type that land produced. So that does include, like if you tap a Temple of the False God for 2 colorless, it does add another one because it says type, not color. If it said color, it wouldn't, add an extra one. I run 2 Planeswalkers in here, Elspeth. I usually run Elspeth and play it for its -3 ability. I don't know why I can't talk today. Destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. In EDH, that's a lot of things. Put 3 1/1s out is nice, and if there isn't a big board presence, I will do that. But I've never actually gotten it to its ultimate in an EDH game. Usually it's been blown up long before that. And then I do run Jace the Mind Sculptor in here, and do actually get him to his -10 or -12 relatively often because I'll have things like Propaganda and Ghostly Prison out, so they can't really attack Jace. His +2, look at the top card of target player's library, and I can put it on the bottom. I do that for my opponents if I notice they're either super land flooded or, it's turn 4 and they haven't played more than 2 lands. I'll just start looking at the top of their library, and if I see a land, I can just throw it right on the bottom. Brainstorming is always nice for 0, draw 3, put 2 from your hand onto the top. I like that. I don't run any Miracle Cost cards in this deck, which would be really nice with, but I do sometimes do the -1, return a creature to its hand, but I'll just start doing the first ability, the +2, over and over again until they're like, when does Jace ultimate? And I'm like, 12, and he's at 13, so you better get rid of him right this second, or it's going to suck for you. We'll go through the creatures here. Get this here. All right. So a little bit of the green ramp I was talking about, Sakura Tribe Elder. It's a 2-drop. You can get them out, turn 2. I don't know how you could get them out turn 1 in this deck, but you sacrifice them to grab a basic, and put it on the battlefield tapped. So you can sack him during combat, like I block and then sack, and you won't take any damage, but you will get a land out of it. Mana Gorger Hydra. Mana Gorger Hydra. This is probably one of my favorite cards from Origins. Whenever a player casts a spell, put a 1/1 counter on it, and it has Trample. This thing gets ridiculously big in a game of EDH, especially if you're playing with, 3 or 4 people. Every person that casts a spell that includes you, you put 1/1 counters on it. And a Trampler that's getting through with that it's a lot to deal with. Thassa. I like Thassa. It's a 3-drop that lets me scry every turn. It's indestructible. As long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, Thassa's not a creature. And then you do have the ability to make things unblockable for 2, which is really nice in a big game. Geist of St. Traft. He's a 3-drop, hexproofing 2/2, and whenever he attacks, you can put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, and then you exile it at the end of combat. You don't have to attack the same person with that token, so you can send Geist at someone with no creatures, and send the angel at somebody who only has ground creatures that were going to block your Geist, and that way the Geist will live and the angel can get through for some damage. Selvala. I really like this card. It has Parlay. It's a 3-drop, green, white, and a colorless for a 2/4. And when you tap it, each player reveals the top card of his or her library. For each non-land card, add a green to your pool and gain 1 life, and then you draw a card. That's really nice with Derevi. If you parlay the beginning of your turn and then attack with something, you can untap Selvala, parlay again. You've gained, potentially 12 life, or potentially 8 life that turn if you're playing a game with 4 people. And you have, 4 in your pool that you can work with if everything works out. Sometimes you only get it for 2, but that's still 2 green in your pool and 2 more life, which can swing a game if you couldn't cast something main phase 1, and now you can. Janara. It's Bant colors, green, white, and blue for a 3/3, and then you can just pump it. But you're pumping it with 1/1 counters, so they do stay. I really like this creature in this deck. It's not as easy to get out turn 1 because it's harder to get all 3 of your land colors. But, the more you pump it, the bigger it gets, the more they're going to have to deal with it, that they're wasting removal they could be wasting on, like, Avacyn or something. Guildspire Avenger. I like this card. Destroy target creature that dealt damage to you this turn just by tapping it. And it has Exalted, so when a creature attacks alone, it gets +1/+1. It's really nice to do that with Derevi and get through for a little bit of extra commander damage, because 21 commander damage ends the game. I run Clever Impersonator and Phyrexian Metamorph in here. They're both 4-drops. Phyrexian Metamorph is 3 colorless and a Phyrexian mana, which is either a blue or 2 life. And then Clever Impersonator is 2 colorless and 2 blue. But they both enter as Phyrexian Metamorph is a artifact or creature, and Clever Impersonator is a non-land permanent. The thing I like about this is the wording on the card. Enter as a copy of any artifact. It's not targeting. So if something has Hexproof or Shroud, you can enter as a copy of it. With Clever Impersonator too. So just because they have Swiftfoot Boots on their whatever, you can enter as a copy of that particular thing. Or if all of their stuff has Hexproof, you're not targeting anything. Solemn Simulacrum. I run this in this deck. You can grab a basic, and when it dies, you draw a card. It's a 4-drop for a 2/2, but it does help you ramp into some of the bigger stuff in here. Hero of Bladehold has a Battle Cry whenever this creature attacks. Each other attacking creature gets +1/+0, and whenever it attacks, put 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. I like this card just to get through for damage. Battle Cry, usually this doesn't stick around long enough for that to be relevant in my games. Elvish Piper, a 4-drop, a green, 3 colorless, and for 1 green, you can tap it and put a creature from your hand into play. So early, you can get a lot of those really expensive creatures out. And with Derevi, I do like that you can untap it and then tap it again and play another huge creature potentially from your hand. You don't get cast triggers off of this, so anything that does have a cast trigger you won't get. And things like Containment Priest do stop this as well. So remove those as soon as possible if you see them. Rafika the Many also has Exalted, like Guildspire Avenger did. And whenever your creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike. So it's attacking, it gets +1/+1 and double strike from him. Just a super valuable creature in this deck. Archangel of Ties does something similar to what Propaganda and Ghostly Prison do. It's a little more conditional. As long as it's untapped, creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 1 for each of them. And when it's attacking, they can't block unless they pay 1 for each of those creatures. So it's a little bit more value when you're attacking, but basically does a similar thing to Ghostly Prison. So you can make things potentially cost 5 to attack you if you have this out and both of those out. Karmic Guide is a 2 white, 3 colorless, protection from black. It has an echo cost, so at the beginning of your upkeep, if it came into under your control the last upkeep, sacrifice it unless you pay its echo cost. So usually this ends up getting sacrificed, but I do play it just because when it enters the battlefield, you can grab a creature from your graveyard and put it straight onto the battlefield. So again, things like Containment Priest will screw that. The main theme here is get rid of Containment Priests. But it does let you grab a creature. Most of the time this gets sacrificed when its echo cost comes up. I don't usually keep it around unless I'm playing a black deck and I need protection from black. Crewfix, God of Horizons, 5-drop, green, blue, and 3 colorless. As long as your devotion to green is less than 7, green and blue, Crewfix isn't a creature. You have no maximum hand size. I run it mainly for that. But if unused mana would empty from your mana pool, it instead becomes colorless and stays in your pool. Now, I don't run any of the new Eldrazi in here, so I don't require any colorless, specifically colorless. But if you have, let's say you have Crewfix out and you tap, 10 land or something and put it into your pool and then go to your next main phase, it will become colorless. You can use that for the colorless cost on the new Eldrazi. So you can cast a Kozilek with 10 that's put on Crewfix, because it does enter as colorless, not as generic. And if they remove it at the beginning of a phase or something, you can add, or you can still use the land that's in there until the end of that phase. Murkfiend Liege. This actually came in the 2013 deck I bought that had Derevi in it. Other green creatures you control get +1/+1. Other blue creatures you control get +1/+1. And then you untap all green and or blue creatures you control during each other player's untap step. That becomes really relevant with things like Selvala, because your Selvala, you do it, you parlay every opponent's turn as well as twice on your own turn. And then because, green and blue creatures both get +1/+1, things like Derevi, which have both green and blue in the cost, do get +2/+2, which is super nice. Overbeing of Myth. This helps to get to that, that 7 that Crewfix costs to get it to become a creature, because it has all the hybrid. Its power and toughness is equal to the number of cards in your hand. So if you have no cards in your hand, or if this is your last card in your hand and you have no buffs, don't cast it because it'll die right away. And at the beginning of your draw step, draw an extra card. It's super nice with things like Murkfiend Liege, because potentially, as long as Murkfiend Liege doesn't go away, this will never go away, and you'll be drawing 2 a turn. Sigarda, I run basically because we have a lot of Eldrazi, a lot of Annihilator triggers. It's 2 green, a 2 green, a white, and 2 colorless for a flying hexproof, and spells or abilities your opponent's control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents. Annihilator, that stops Annihilator, that stops Grave Pact, other stuff like that makes you sacrifice, and there's a lot of that at our store. Sun Titan, this is one of the cards I use with Blade of Selves. So I will put a Blade of Selves onto Sun Titan. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you can return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That includes lands, like if you want to grab a wasteland or a fetch land and grab another, land with a fetch land. But if you put Blade of Selves on it, you get an entering trigger for each opponent that a Sun Titan is attacking because they all enter. You don't get the attack trigger because they enter already attacking, but you do get a Sun Titan trigger for the entering for each one. Consecrated Sphinx, just a super value card for card draw. It's a 6-drop, 2 blue, 4 colorless for a 4/6. And whenever an opponent draws, you can draw 2. I use this a lot with Selvala because of the way that card's worded. You do draw that card at the end of the parlay. So you parlay, you have 3 opponents and they all parlay, and then phone's ringing. But you all parlay, they draw their cards, and then you draw 2 for each person that drew a card. So if you're playing with 3 people, you're drawing a lot. Prime Speaker, this is another card I use with Blade of Selves a lot. It enters with X 1/1 counters, where X is the greatest power. So if I have like Merc Fiend Liege out and Derevi out, the greatest power will be 4. So it'll enter with 4 counters, and then you draw 5. If Blade of Selves enters and it's a 5/5, it'll enter with 5. You'll have your 2 or 3 or whatever Prime Speakers that'll enter with 5 counters, and then you'll draw for each one of those before the legendary rule takes them out, because they do have to enter for you to have to get rid of one. Elish Norn, another awesome white creature. The Praetors are all a little overpowered. I don't run Vorinclex in here because it's a little too overpowered. I don't like to have like a degenerative board state where everybody's tapping their lands and it's like, oh, now I gotta wait 2 turns until I can actually do anything. But Vigilant, other creatures you control get +2/+2, and it kills a lot of token decks, with -2/-2, and a lot of things people would cast, like Stoneforge Mystic, would die right away. Drogskull Reaver, flying double strike, lifelinker, and whenever you gain life, draw a card. With double strike, you're going to gain life twice, so you do get to draw twice from one attack with him, which is super awesome. Plus, he's flying, and flyers are always nice. Is that 8/8 Vigilant Indestructible I was talking about. Gives all your other permanents indestructible. Also becomes the biggest target ever when you cast it, or when you put it out with Elvish Piper. But you do get every permanent to be indestructible, so they can't board wipe on you unless they have like a Merciless Eviction, something that will get rid of everything with exiling, but they can exile it with Swords Plowshares, easy enough. Voidwinnower, I talked about it in the last deck tech. Can't cast even spells and can't block with even creatures. That's token decks. That's board wipes, a large amount of board wipes. You can still cast things like End Hostilities, but a large amount of the board wipes that people normally run are even cost. And then Jin-Gitaxias. Like I said, the Praetors are a little overpowered. At the beginning of your end step, draw 7. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. I don't feel like this card's super mean when I'm playing against people, because a Reliquary Tower does make his second ability not relevant to people, because if you reduce no maximum hand size by 7, there's still no maximum hand size, so they don't have to discard their hand. And then the biggest creature I run in here is, of course, World Spine Worm. He's an 11-drop for a 15/15. When he dies, put 3/5/5 green worm tokens with trample, and when he's put into a graveyard, shuffle him back in. It's nice to be able to shuffle late game. If you get him out early game, awesome, but it's nice to be able to shuffle late game. Plus, he's value with those 5/5s. So, super awesome creature to have in here. So that is my Derevi deck. I will have this deck on Tapped Out. Should be in the description below. Thanks to everybody who commented or liked or gave us, feedback on the last one. As you see, I did change my sleeves. If you want to get a hold of us, just hit us up in the comments. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at _time_carrot, time TYME, or Jeremy at MTGHeadQuarters. And like and subscribe. All right, thanks, guys.
Use all different kinds of content, so if you haven't yet, click on my face to subscribe. If you want to watch more videos, I've got some sweet playlists, including this one, where I open up every fat pack ever created. I've also got this one over here, where I open just about anything vintage and old and expensive. for your enjoyment. And all this is made possible by the awesome backers at our Patreon, which is linked in the description of every video. Hop on over there, check it out, see if it's something you might want to consider. If not, sit back, enjoy, and I'll still love you.